Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Throne of Glass, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on the book with my spoiler-free review. So if you live in a cave, Throne of Glass is the first in a young adult fantasy series of the same name, and the author is Sarah J. Maas, another Polycon author that I'm really excited to meet next March. I listened to the audiobook version of Throne of Glass, and I'll talk a little bit more about the audio version and the narrator at the end of my review. The reason I started this series now is because book 5 in the series, Empire of Storms, comes out in September, and I thought I could read these books over the summer and get caught up before the next release. Throne of Glass is marketed as a young adult fantasy, but there's not really that many fantasy elements. They do talk about Fae who used to rule a long time ago, and there's some mentioning of magical beasts, but to be honest, if I talk too much about even those minor magical elements, it would kind of give you some spoilers for the story. So just know that this is not like a high fantasy or anything like that. The magical elements are very minimal. Think of it more like a period piece in the time of castles and sword-wielding assassins and kings, except set in an alternate universe. Also, it doesn't really read like a typical YA book. Selena does have a bit of the attitude of a teenager sometimes in the story, but the characters are all a little too old for this to really be called young adult. I call it more of like a new adult kind of fantasy. So our main character in Throne of Glass is Selena, and she is one of those sword-wielding assassins that I was talking about. The kicker being that she's only 18 years old. At the beginning of the story, Selena has spent a year in a kind of prison where she's with slaves and other prisoners working in a salt mine, and she's being removed from the prison and she's taken to meet a prince, and she's offered the opportunity to win her freedom in this tournament-style battle with other assassins and warriors and things like that. And that's basically the main plot throughout the entire story. There's a lot of other side plots going on, but that's like the big plot of Throne of Glass. Selena is very good at her job of being an assassin. She was taken in by an assassin's guild when she was younger. She was raised around assassins. She probably had to prove herself all the time. So yeah, she's a little bit conceited and she definitely has an attitude, but you can see how she would kind of have to keep a chip on her shoulder growing up the way that she did. Selena is often actually kind of bratty in the story. She has a very sharp tongue and she has a quick retort. Like anytime anybody says anything to her, she's got something snappy to say back to them. And for the people who didn't like Throne of Glass, I think that they disliked Selena, and that was a big part of their problem. And I can understand why, but I think that the author actually did a really good job showing us what Selena says on the outside versus her inner monologue. But Selena is complex and emotional and difficult, and I think that actually makes her really relatable. She's also a total ass kicker. She's the most notorious and well-known assassin in the land that she lives in, and that's not for nothing. We got to see a few of Selena's violent tendencies throughout the story, but to be honest, I kind of wish that we had seen that a little bit more. For a story about an assassin competing in a tournament against other like-minded people, you would think that there would be a lot more action here, and for me, that's why this book lost a star in my rating. I feel like there were kind of several missed opportunities to show like action and violence here. The tournament that's going on throughout the whole book has all these trials that they have to go through, and a lot of them were like completely skipped over or they were glossed over really briefly. I would have liked to see a little bit more of those. There was definitely a lot of action in the final third of the book, and it was bloody and it was violent and it was fast moving and it was exciting, and I really just wish that we had seen more of that throughout the book, but I'm happy that at least that took place in the last 1/3 because it was kind of worth the wait for. I feel like the first half of the book was really focusing more on setting up the world building of Aderlin, and then also kind of like laying the groundwork for the character building for Selena and Dorian and Chaol. I loved the world and character building, don't get me wrong. I just wish it had been peppered with more action along the way. The story was really well written though. I really like Maas's writing style. I feel like she did a good job combining old-timey castle era and like the language they used and the things around them with these really well-rounded characters that you could drop into a modern setting and they would still work. I just mentioned Dorian Dorian and Kale. Yes, in this book, there is a bit of a love triangle happening. Although I do have to say that there's not a lot of romance in this book at all, so don't expect that. You can see the foundation being laid for future romance and heartbreak, but this book had more like some tender moments here and there. It was just enough to get me really interested in the relationships that Selena had with each one of these guys. Both Dorian and Kale are each a couple of years older than Selena, which is again why I have a hard time thinking of this as a YA. Both guys are good to Selena. They're both well written. They're both very likable. But I will say that I do already have a preference. I do already have a team. I like Dorian. He's a charming prince, but he doesn't act spoiled. He has some unusual viewpoints and he's kind. He's kind to Selena. He brings her gifts. He's kind of goofy sometimes, but I'm rooting for Kale. I am totally shipping Selena and Kale. Dorian just didn't do it for me. Kale is the captain of the guard, and he's kind of like Selena's bodyguard when she's staying at the castle for the tournament. He's kind of in charge of making sure that she doesn't do anything stupid or, you know, go all assassin-y on anybody. He's gruff and he's overprotective, and he's even downright mean to Selena at the very, very beginning of the story before we really know who he is. I just feel like he's the better match for Selena. I usually go for the overly cocky bad boy type. Dorian is a little bit of that, although with like a kinder side, but Kale is the underdog. I feel like he and Selena have a deeper connection. She has kind of a sweet flirtation with Dorian, and they do have like a good relationship, but I just feel like Kale is such a better fit for her. He understands her in a really different way, and there's a lot of scenes in the book where they're together and they're really not even talking, but you'll see them like give a look to each other or a nod or just a very brief conversation, and it'll mean so much. I feel like their relationship would be a lot more interesting to read. It would give me all the feels. Let me know who you're shipping. If you're Team Dorian, that's okay, I'll forgive you, but we can talk about it in the comment section below. So like I said before, I did actually do the audio for this book, and the narrator, Elizabeth Evans, was fantastic. She nailed Selena's voice. She delivered Selena's biting remarks really well. And her voices for Kale and Dorian were each so different from each other that I could really tell them apart. I know that she narrates the rest of the books that are already available on audio, and hoping that they keep her as the narrator for future books that are coming out in the series. Overall, love the world building, love the characters, love the story, great start to a series, and knowing that this series isn't done yet. There's another book coming out at the beginning of September is really something exciting to look forward to. I give Throne of Glass 4 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more of the series. I will review The Assassin's Blade, which is the novella set, and Crown of Midnight, which is book 2, very soon on the channel, so keep a lookout for that. My video review is spoiler free, but if you haven't read the book yet, the comment section might not be, so just keep that in mind. I will leave a link to the blog if you would like to read more from Goldilox and the Three Wares, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!